Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I'm very, very pleased and honored to be here tonight. I will tell you, it is a great time to be a former. I'm writing a book. I wasn't gonna until the election, and for some reason I changed my mind. And it's really a great thing to do because it's a cathartic, and it also gives me an opportunity to be contemplative. And so one of the things that kind of dredged up from the memory bank is how or when I first learned I was going to be an intelligence officer. And so I thought I'd share that with you tonight. I was about 12 years old, and my dad was in the Army, 28 years. He was a signal intelligence officer. He started in World War II and, collecting messages from the Germans and Japanese and morphing that into useful intelligence. And so we were on a permanent change of station move from Japan to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Now, the custom in our household was that my parents would drop me and my sister off at one of our grandparents. And so that's what we did in the summer of 1953. I was about 12 years old. And my grandparents were living in Philadelphia. Of course, it's always a good gig as a grandchild when you go with the grandparents because, you can do anything you want, sort of. And of course, in the day, the big thing, the novelty was television in the house. That was still the new thing. So my grandparents would indulge me, and I could stay up as late as I want watching television. So on Friday nights, I used to love to watch what was called the Schmidt's Beer Mystery Hour. And they would show these great old Charlie Chan movies. So one Friday night, I watched a movie, and it ended, and it didn't have the term then, but I did what the equivalent of what we call surfing today. Except in those days, you actually had to walk up to the TV and turn the dial, So I did that. I walked up to the dial, and it was only like channel 2 through 13 or something like that, VHF. And so I turned the channel between channel 4 and 5, and I heard somebody talking. No picture, but somebody's talking. So I just stood there and held the channel selector between channel 4 and 5, and for about 15 minutes, and I figured out it was the dispatcher for the Philadelphia Police Department. Well, in those days, in Philadelphia, there's all kinds of murder and mayhem on Friday and Saturday nights. It was pretty interesting. So pretty soon I got tired of holding the TV selector, so I switched it back to make sure I could still get the signal. And then I ran out to the kitchen, got some toothpicks, and stuck the toothpicks in the selector. So I guess I hacked my grandparents' TV set. And so it was really interesting. And so I stayed up till about 3:30 in the morning just listening to this. Cruisers getting dispatched to all kinds of strange calls. So the next night, I got a map from my grandfather, a city map of Philadelphia. And I started plotting where the police cruisers were dispatched to. And then, pretty soon you figure out what the high crime areas are. Then, you know how the police have 10 codes, like 10-4, 10-6, 10-8, so I started keeping, and they use a lot of them. So I got 3x5 cards, and I started keeping track, what these, and pretty soon over time you can kind of figure out what they meant. Then I found out that the officers in the police officers, lieutenants and above, had their own call signs, personal call signs. And so I had another set of cards, and I kept, started writing those down. So after a couple of weeks of this, I'm keeping all kinds of records, and I plotted out, and I figured out, for example, the police district boundaries just by listening. It was just kind of cool to do this, So about 3 weeks later, my parents come to Philadelphia and retrieve my sister and me. And so my dad says, well, what have you been doing? So I whip out my map and my card files, and I give him a pretty good briefing on how the Philadelphia Police Department operates. It was 65 years ago, but I'll never forget the expression on my dad's face. My God, I've raised my own replacement. So that's how I knew.